Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 219 review. This is a normal 2-week sprint. Let's get started. I'll start with the overview, David on the UI, Adam on providers, Joe on the platform, and Keenan on the API. As you can see, it was a relatively normal sprint, a little lighter than usual, with 48 PRs merged this sprint. And that was spread over pretty evenly over bugs and enhancements. And over to David with the UI.
So for this sprint, there was a total of 7 different UI related PRs merged. We'll just jump straight into the bug fixes. The first bug fix is a fix for multi-select dropdown to stay open for multi-selection on an edit. This is a pretty simple fix. It just makes it so that all the multi-select dropdowns in Manage IQ, previously when you tried to click on multiple options, it would close the dropdown after selecting one option. Now it should stay open so you can easily select multiple things in the dropdown. The second fix is a fix for the sub-row items in the summary page. This fix just changes the CSS of the Smart Management box. It basically just aligns all the text columns so it's a little easier to read and looks neater. Moving on to the enhancements. The first one is the rename memory labels in the reconfigure form. This one's really quick. It just in the VM reconfigure form, it just changed the memory type dropdown label to unit. That's all. The next enhancement is the reconfigure form page enhancements. So same form, VM reconfigure form. This change just basically tries to pretty up the form a bit. Number of examples of changes here. All the text boxes in the tables have been aligned properly. Before they were a little misaligned. All the buttons should line up as well, and all the different drop downs and text boxes throughout the form have been moved onto single lines just to make it a little neater and easier to read. Moving on to the final enhancement is the customizable chart top values. This one basically, previously, it charts in the reports section. You could basically select up to the top 10 values to display in the chart. This has now been changed so that you can customize this in the settings.yaml file to show whatever top number of values you want. If you can show the top 20 values, 30 values instead, as opposed to being forced to only at the top 10. Finally, the remaining 2 PRs are mostly just translation fixes and some code refactoring for the Cypress config file. That's it for UI changes. I'll pass it on to Adam.
Thanks, David. For core of this sprint, Joe fixed a bug where the provider orchestrate destroy method was missing an extended timeout in an edge case where if the provider wasn't already paused, it basically requeued itself. And in that case, it was using the default queue timeout, which is significantly shorter and would could cause the destroy to fail due to a timeout later on. So we fixed up that. Amazon, the bot updated the list of instance types. And for IBM Cloud, Jay removed a deprecated parameter from the PowerVS VM provision, which is no longer in use by the PowerVS API. Next slide. For Kubernetes, we now reject events that do not have a timestamp, since this causes a table scan on the event handler and can cause significant delays when processing these events. For Rev, we fixed a bug where targeted refresh of VMs or hosts were causing external or OVN switches to be duplicated. And for workflows, we updated the workflow credential format to be more explicit in the payload for the parameters that it's being passed in. And we automatically set the network host for development mode. This was already done previously on Docker, but now it'll be done as well for Podman if you're using something like Fedora or CentOS locally. That is it for providers. Over to Joe.
Okay, thanks, Adam. For platform enhancements, as mentioned previously within the UI, the translations were updated based upon the July 24th code. Keenan updated Puma to version 6. Brandon updated the Codified Operator SDK to version 1.30. Then Keenan had 2 refactorings around the Errol helpers for generating Errol and to simplify the metric rollup column declarations. And he also added to chargeback the concept of group by date first. For platform bugs, next slide. Keenan mostly reverted the logic for the query that was responsible for preloading the Vim performance states. He then kept long since archived objects out of the Vim performance state query. And then next, Adam prevented more than one event handler from running. And also, as Adam discussed, the provider destroy timeout I was working on. Next, Jason added the workflow dispatched to the default generator CI YAML. So when you generate new repositories, you'd have the option to manually run the CI action. I changed the performance capture timer queue message to medium priority. And then I disallowed the timecop 097 as it was buggy. And Brandon fixed the fully qualified Docker image location as the Docker IO prefix wasn't implicit, and it was causing issues when you didn't explicitly put docker.io. That's it for bugs in platform. Next slide.
Cool. So just one change over in the API. Adam added edit for configuration script payloads to move us forward on our workflow provider. On to Jason.
All right, and that's it for our Sprint 219 review. The next Sprint 220 review will be on September 6th at the usual place and time. And as always, I'd like to thank the presenters today, all the contributors to Manage IQ, and our whole community. Thanks, everyone.